I'm Josh.
And I'm Ben.
And this is the Accidental Marketers Podcast, where we have conversations with marketing leaders at tech companies, as well as business owners we think are doing interesting things, with a heavy focus on growth strategies. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Ben Yost, and I'm joined by my partner, Josh Elkin. We're the founders of LinkFlow and co-hosts of the Accidental Marketers Podcast, where we feature top marketing and growth leaders in the B2B tech and SaaS space. This episode is brought to you by LinkFlow. We're an SEO agency specializing in link building geared towards the software industry that helps our clients increase traffic and revenues through high-quality link building and SEO strategy. We got into this because we heard so many horror stories and experienced firsthand shady SEOs not being transparent and providing low-quality links with little care as to the impact those links would have on the site. So if you'd like to learn more, feel free to go to our website, linkflow.ai. You can check out our case studies, anything there. Or you can even email me personally at ben@linkflow.ai. Before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Ryan Hilliard. Tell you to go check out their website. It's hypeauditor.com. It's a 100% AI-powered influencer marketing platform. Really cool what they're doing over there, so go check them out. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest, Greer Lynch. Greer leads marketing and strategy at Leaf Logistics, where she is focused on transforming the truckload transportation industry. She works with leading shippers to reduce costs, increase business reliability, and reduce their carbon footprint, while also working with trucking companies to gain business predictability. Prior to Leaf, Greer led partnerships marketing at trucking software company Convoy, founded the software company AnyMod, and worked in marketing at Microsoft and Apple. So Greer, it's great to have you on today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Hey, Greer. So you've done a bunch of different things in your career. I guess maybe just get us up to speed of kind of the twists and turns it took to get to this point.
Sure. So, I think the accidental marketer is a great title, because I think when we talk about a career looking back, you think, looking ahead, when you start out, you think, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I know how I'm going to get there. But then, you have different twists and turns in your career. So I've always had a North Star on what I wanted to do, which is sort of what I'm doing now, leading marketing strategy for a startup. And to get there, I started early on in my career. One of my first jobs was working at a company doing communications and PR for a number of tech startups, and really fell in love with technology and then startups and all that. And so I was there for a number of years, worked with some really interesting companies. Some of them, I was there when they got acquired by Google or went public. So it was really a great education in that. But that's when I learned there was just so much more to marketing that I wanted to do, and I wanted to go in-house and work more closely to a product. That's what took me to business school, where I met you at Kellogg. And while I was there, I interned at Apple, learned about, product marketing. After graduating, I went to Microsoft and really focused on media, went deep in that discipline. I know you all are experts on SEO. While I was at Microsoft, I did a lot of SEM, did that for Xbox and some other products there. So that was a great education, but really felt I was farther away from what I wanted to do, which is get back to startups. So after a couple of years there, that's when I left and co-founded a company called AnyMod. Chat about that later. Was there for a number of years. We pivoted a few times, so I can talk about what it's like to pivot a startup, but really built out some interesting software solutions for web developers while I was there. And then, I've worked in a couple other tech startups over the years. Got into logistics by way of working at Convoy, which is, they were kind of a startup when I was there, about 350 people, but now I think they're well over 1,000. So hard to call them a startup anymore, but a big player in digitizing a lot of the truckload transportation industry. It still primarily operates on phone calls and fax machines. So there's a huge opportunity for advancement there. It's $1 trillion market. So when Leaf Logistics came calling, I was excited. They're really revolutionizing the industry in a number of ways. So I've been at Leaf for about 2 years now, and started when they were newly a Series A startup. We're now past our Series B and continuing to grow at a steady clip. So that kind of takes you up to speed where I am.
Very cool. Thanks for that background. And could you explain, like, in a way that our grandmas could understand, kind of what Leaf Logistics does?
Yeah. So okay, for the grandmas who are listening, so we work with large shippers, household names you may have heard of, like AB InBev, who are moving tons and tons of freight by a truckload. So a lot of the trucks you see on the road are full truckload. They have everything from like beer bottles to consumer packaged goods to oil and gas. There's any number of things. It's really the backbone of how things move today. And I think it's like I said before, it's $1 trillion market in the U.S. And we think we can operate it at 20% efficiency, because there's a lot of inefficiency in the way that things are managed and contracted today. So today, if you're driving on the highway, you see a truck, about 30 to 40% of those trucks are empty, because there's not the tools to kind of stitch together complete routes. So a truck driver might be able to get a paid route from point A to point B, but it's really hard for them to get a paid route back. So they end up going for maybe, days or weeks at a time, maybe even a month on the road, just trying to be paid for every mile they come back. Because if they drive directly back from point A to point B, they're going to foot the now astronomical costs for gas themselves. So they really need to be paid for their work. So what we're doing is kind of breaking down a lot of the silos in the industry, and we apply machine learning and can process, we have like $25 billion worth of transportation data we process and build algorithms around, and we can identify, we can stitch together a route here with shipper A, B, and C, and it's a continuous route that will get that driver paid for every mile that they're moving. It also lowers the shipper's cost structure. And most importantly, in eliminating those empty miles, we eliminate the associated scope 3 carbon emissions. So if you remove those 30 to 40% of empty trucks driving on the road, that's a lot of excess and unnecessary carbon emissions. So there's a whole sustainability angle to what we're working on too. So it's exciting. We've gotten a lot of traction, grown 10x year over year, and well on our way to do it again. So it's
awesome.
Exciting. I think, with startups too, I've been at a number. Sometimes you have a great idea, but the timing's wrong. For better or for worse, the spotlight's on supply chain now. I think we've all experienced no matter where you are, we all saw empty shelves in the last 2 years and realized how important supply chain is. So we've gotten the timing thing correct accidentally. Good.
That's wonderful. This is fascinating to me because, and I'm sure Josh as well, like just from like a process perspective, I'm like a huge process efficiency nerd, right? And I think it's just amazing to like stitch all of those routes together. It's fascinating. It's a really cool.
I mean, and it's not necessarily like a novel concept to say, oh, we should, have someone there and on the way back. But like I said, it's a very siloed industry, operates predominantly on phone calls and fax machines. Like, how is anyone going to even access the data? And even if they have the data, what are they going to do about it, right? So it's not that anyone was doing anything wrong. It's just no one had the tools to do anything about it. Luckily, with advances in technology, now we can use AI and machine learning to really tackle that problem in a meaningful way.
That's incredible. Love it.
Cool.
So I'm curious to learn more about how you grew, how you 10x, but maybe before that, curious about the startup you co-founded. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I was at Microsoft, it was awesome. Like, I had a huge advertising budget, fresh out of grad school, responsible for spending like 50 million or more a year on ads. Like, it was a fun job. And it was cool, but it was so far removed from any inbound marketing, product marketing, that kind of thing. So maybe I over-indexed, going from like a several 100,000 employee company to a 2-person company, but it was wild. It was fun. So I was connected with a technical co-founder who is CEO and the developer himself. And we started working on a product. Initially, it was an e-commerce solution. And to do that, oh boy, I threw spaghetti at the wall a couple times to try to make magic happen on, micro budget, and was able to get some customers using it. But what we ultimately found is the technology that we were building to enable the e-commerce websites that we were that technology, the underlying technology was more interesting to sell. So that's what we ended up pivoting the business to, helping people build their websites in an easier way. So came up with kind of a component technology to help people who were non-technical edit their websites more easily. Somewhere in between, like if you've ever dabbled in HTML, somewhere in between the level of hard coding a website yourself or WordPress, something in between
Yeah.
there.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
there's tools like Webflow now
Yep.
that are like
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle, right? Like
Yeah.
it helps if you know HTML, CSS.
Yeah. So
But
it's still around, and there's now expanded to some other solutions for you know some other similar tools for web solutions. So exciting. But yeah, I was there for about 3 years, and then
cool.
moved on to a new startup challenge. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, so I guess now you're kind of in that middle. You went from a massive company to a tiny
Yeah.
one, and now you're in
Yeah.
that sweet spot,
Yeah.
the Goldilocks middle.
Yeah.
What do you like? I guess, yeah. What is this kind of your ideal place to be? Is kind of something that has a
Yeah.
bit of product market fit already, is like mid-sized, growing.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. I feel really good about where I am for a couple reasons. I think product's super important, but what I found is like you can have an incredible product, but not a great team, and it'll fail. Or you can have a great team and a mediocre product, and might actually do something. I think we have both. We have a really good product market fit and a really great team. So I met with our CEO when I was interviewing Anshu, and he's just like been in the industry for between him and the other co-founders, there's just decades of experience in the industry, and they really knew what they were talking about and the problems they wanted to fix in the industry. So it felt like they really understood and cared deeply and genuinely about what was happening. And then I also just think we talk a lot about you know being good citizens of the world in terms of the work we're doing and driving down carbon emissions, but also we instated like volunteer days, and we just or there's like parental leave, and we have that a pretty generous one for such a young company. So I think just being good citizens of the world, they really walk the walk there. So for me, I feel great with the people I work with. I feel valued and that kind of thing. I think you can't underestimate that. But also in terms of, you mentioned like the size of the company, we've been growing pretty quickly. We are a remote first company, so that's been an interesting challenge to maintain the company culture as we've grown over time, but we're doing a pretty decent job about that. It took me like a year. I joined during like the heavy COVID days, and so I didn't even meet anybody in person for like a year and a half. So I've met everybody a couple times now, but I still felt that strong culture early on. So it's hard to do, but seems like we're doing okay so far.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, like in terms of culture and being fully remote. We experience the same thing. It's like it's always a kind of a big issue for us, is like, how do we continue to maintain like a solid and engaging culture for a company that doesn't meet in person? So what are some of the things that you guys do over at Leaf Logistics that helps to keep people engaged and feel like they're part of that bigger community?
I mean, we do some of the standard things of like a monthly team huddle, or like we'll do little events here and there. Like we have trivia for Pride Month, or we did like a cooking class with some chef in Italy one day, and I made gnocchi that fell apart when I tried to boil it, but it turned into mashed potatoes, but the idea was there. But we have those kind of things. But then I think also it's bringing people together in a variety of forms. We did finally do an all-team week-long offsite, which was really nice in Puerto Rico. So that was fun. I don't know if we'll do that every year, but that was really fantastic. I think after a long COVID break of not seeing anybody, that was a treat. But then just like in the way we interact, I think understanding and believing that a good idea can come from anywhere, and so really valuing everyone's opinion and asking for everyone's participation. it's a pretty democratic kind of way that we operate. There's not much hierarchy, and that's intentional. So we don't have many titles, which I think can be, well, I know it can be off-putting from interviewing people. Someone comes in wanting a specific title, but if you care more about title than the work you're doing, then maybe it's not the right fit. So we have strange titles for some roles, like you know, we have a chief data janitor. Like
Nice.
we have interesting. So it's not. It's an interesting culture that way. People who just really want to meaningfully change something and deeply believe in it and are there for the right reasons. I think it also comes down to, like, we have a flexible PTO policy, which can be a blessing or a curse if you like, depending on where you are. So the leadership team really tries to model that and take time off and ensure that everyone's taking time off to bring their best selves to work.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's awesome. Yeah, we do a lot of similar things.
Mm-hmm.
I think very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're 12 people, so it's a little easier.
It's a little bit easier to manage.
I mean, for me, like, I have 3 little kids, so I'm like,
Right.
I'm okay with getting up early and working. I'm gonna go take off and pick someone up from kindergarten, and then I'll come back on. And I like the flexibility to do that.
Yeah.
I'm unapologetically a working parent, and
Yep.
that's great in some organizations, and I've been in some organizations where that is not a good thing. So seems to be fine where I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting too. I think a lot of it also falls on the person, and I know, like, we've had people that just don't work well in this kind of an environment. And they need more structure that an office can provide. Whereas myself, I'm very similar. It's like, I've also got a young daughter. She's 7 months old, and I love being home with her and my wife all day and being able to see that whole progression. And remote work allows that flexibility, which is fantastic. But also my brain just doesn't, like, if I'm forced into structure that I didn't create, like, it doesn't work for me, And so I think there's an element of kind of nature and nurture there that's plays a role. Yeah.
Like, Ben, if you had to go to an office at 9 a.m. every day, do you think you could do it?
No, I would. I've done it, and I got fired from pretty much every job that I ever had to do that before.
I've done it now. I've
Mm.
cleaned out half my closet. I feel like now I don't have the same need for business casual these days. But
I don't think I actually own
Just tops, at least. Not
I don't know if
bottoms.
I own a. I don't think I own I certainly don't own a suit. And I'm not sure here at my house, I don't even know that I have any. Probably have one button-up shirt that I have.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
I need to go shopping.
You break out on sales calls.
That's great.
Cool. Well, so nerding out a little on marketing. So you 10x'd. What were, I guess, like some of your main reasons you were able to 10x? What was like your main growth channels that you used to do that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, I mean, I wish I could take all the credit for it. So, but I can't.
They're probably
I think especially at an early stage company, you have a title. Everyone does, but everyone's doing many things outside of your actual role and responsibility. And I think that's how it gets done early on. And now where we are today, everything's a bit more formalized and roles are a bit more specific and processes are now in place as we understand a go-to-market motion and, we can repeat sales motion, et cetera. But I'd say, like, early on, it's kind of, okay, what's working? Let's try a lot. So when I came to Leaf, we were doing some things, but we didn't necessarily have a specific philosophy on what was a product and what wasn't. So early days, I really came in and was like, okay, here's what we're doing. This is what we're calling a product. Let's put a name on it and let's work with sales and get some materials for them to start bringing this to market and give everyone the same language and tools to talk about what it is we do. So to drive some more consistency there. So a lot of that kind of block and tackle product marketing work was what I was working on early on. And then just a lot of experiments to see what's going to work, what's not. I think one direction we are moving in, and a test I ran early on was thinking through, account-based marketing as a big tactic for us. So to back up, we serve a couple primary audiences. We serve those large shippers I talked about. We also serve carriers, or that's like the name for a truck driver company. They might have like a dispatcher and 100 trucks, that kind of thing. And brokers also. Brokers are kind of some of the people who work in between So those are our three audiences, but we were really focused early days on that shipper side of the business, and getting new customers coming in. And so I had an educated guess that account-based marketing might be the path to that. That's, we have these large accounts. If they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year on moving stuff in trucks, you better believe there's a lot of decision makers. So it's not like I'm just getting one person to my website to convert to a lead and then hand it off to sales and then, wipe my hands. No, it's, there's probably 10 different decision makers, maybe more. They all have different titles, like the VP of transportation versus the head of supply chain versus the CFO versus the head of sustainability. They all are probably decision makers, need to be involved, but there's a discrete message for each. One cares about cost, one cares about like tender acceptance and all these other metrics that we care about in the industry. So, I really focused early on a test on account-based marketing. Is this going to work? So kind of did a homegrown approach to that with email cadences I wrote to specific personas within a target account list. Followed that up with like another homegrown advertising approach to target specific personas overlaid with different target accounts and build a lookalike audience on LinkedIn, et cetera, some direct mail. And it started chipping away and helping. But really, it's like an all hands on deck thing to get new customers or to expand our footprint with current customers.
So is that when you say like account-based marketing? Because we're not super versed in that. Like we've heard the term. Is that so? That's kind of like you're just kind of swarming and hitting multiple people with different messaging that's going to appeal to them.
And it's working hand in hand with sales. So and swarming is great. That's actually a word I have used to describe it internally. It's like, working hand in hand with sales. So it's your traditional marketing sales funnel, like marketing starts at the top and then everything kind of gets handed off to sales eventually. But an account-based marketing isn't necessarily like a clean funnel like that. Marketing is involved heavily early on, but also, and sales is involved a bit early on, and then sales might be involved more heavily later on, but marketing is also still involved. So everybody's involved the whole way through, right? And so just got to know my sales team
Gotcha.
closely. But it was just like, okay, so I'm sending this letter, you send this letter to them. Now you're going to call this person and they open this email over here. And we also hit them with this ad over here. That was kind of the approach I took. There's a lot of fancy software with bells and whistles that can say, oh, this person hit your website. They track by IP address. There's really cool stuff you can do. And we'll probably get there eventually, but they could do stuff like, oh, this is the head of whatever at this beverage company. So now we're going to give them a bespoke ad that says Leaf Logistics and beverage company name together, and they can click on that ad and then they'll have like their own customized version of our website.
That's awesome.
We're not there yet, but I think we'll get there hopefully soon. There's,
Honestly, this is really interesting, I guess timely, because we actually just started down this path where you mentioned the IP address thing, and we actually just started using Zoom Info. And
they have a little bit of that too.
Yeah, they have that feature that's called intent. And I was like very skeptical about it before we started because I was like, I don't know, like how accurate this is going to be. And we had used previously another tool called Lead Feeder to do the same thing, really, with very little success. The only difference was we weren't able to drill down to different people that get that information. We just saw the company. But one thing I was going to say is like just today, I was reviewing a lead list that I pulled from that intent search. And the craziest thing happened. I actually saw that one of the existing leads that we're working right now, we've had multiple calls with him, was in that search. And I was like, oh my goodness, like it actually works. And so it's just like mind blowing to me. I was like, because I was very skeptical, and it was just like, wow, this could be huge. It's pretty amazing.
There's a lot of tools out there if we want to spend the money on them, But I'd say the other thing that we also focused on early on, just to finish that thought, is thought leadership. And I know you all were kind of touched on this on the podcast I listened to the other day, but creating a lot of content. But of course, like if you create a lot of content, you need to drive traffic to it. So I'm really interested in the work you all are doing to, you know, drive SEO, not just to someone's website, but also to their content and surface that for folks. That's really important because we spend a lot of time and money on creating thought leadership, especially as a startup. But how do you get that distributed to folks is really the critical question. And what you're doing just to surface it to people who are interested in creating searches on those topics is really wonderful, because then it's a welcome piece of information they're coming across, not just another ad they're seeing.
Yeah.
Which I also love advertising, but
Yeah.
I've got another question on that kind of thread, though, is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned early on that you have found that a lot of this industry is still kind of on like fax and phones, right?
Yeah.
I've experienced that too. I worked for an industrial hosing company
Mm-hmm.
a while back, and they were the same way. And so I'm curious, do you find like a lot of resistance to implementing things like this within that industry?
I'd say some, but I mean, yes and no. Our timing so far, I mean, so far so good on timing. They're lucky for us. There have been a number of new entrants into the market trying to automate existing processes. So like company I was at before this, they automated a lot of the contracting capabilities on how, you know, a lot of brokerage operates with phone calls saying like, hey, I have a load moving, I don't know, from this place to that place, paying $800. Can you take it? And they come back, collect a quote, and there's back and forth negotiation. A lot of folks have, you know, automated that with an app experience. So like Uber Freight's another company that's doing that. So they might be doing something, and they're doing stuff that's different than what we're doing, but that's already at least helped people in the industry accept more technological solutions and kind of pave the way for other solutions like what we're doing. So again, we do something different, but just the idea and the comfort with using technology is probably better than it would have been 10 years ago. And the other thing that I mentioned this before, I think just we've seen a massive shift in interest after the advent of the pandemic, right? As supply chains broke and folks from our industry were just trying to get stuff on shelves while trying not to hemorrhage too much cash, which is a really like tough problem. The literal shapes of their supply chains changed overnight and continue to be an ongoing challenge in some sectors. So that, you know, really rapidly shifted the appetite for innovations. Just like, yeah, I'm here. I'm eager to try something new if it's going to help me chip away at this problem I have and get stuff to my customers.
So it makes me think of like an issue we have sometimes is so you're trying to sell, you are selling something that these people might not already be aware of that it exists, right, or they might not be searching for, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to like, forget even SEO, but when it comes to like, you're in a way you're creating awareness for this solution.
Yeah.
And it's more of like push instead of pull in a sense. Like,
yeah, it's like category building, or, you know,
yeah,
it's a common question we get is, well, who are your competitors? Like, well, we don't really have any because no one's doing what we're doing. So yeah, I think that comes back to thought leadership. And as a startup, it's like you have to sell those early adopters on your vision and what you're how you're looking to transform the industry long term, while also somehow providing value today. It's like, here's what I can do for you today. Come on this journey with me, and in 10 years we're going to be doing this big thing. We're still going to have meaningful impact for you today in these ways, but we're going to continue building new products and chip away at this problem, but let's get there together. That's hard to do, I think, at the outset, and why, you know, when you're just getting the sales engine going at a new company, identifying, it's like there are companies or organizations within a company, or even just the personalities of the people you'll engage with who are early adopters. But to identify them is really tough. It's just pounding the pavement to say, like, who has the personality type where they're willing to like risk their career on taking a new chance on how they do business. So it's really hard. And then when you start to get proof points, okay, now there's this name brand is using you, or this other referral, or someone decides to do a pilot program with you and they see success, and now you can expand your business. We've also just started, I think those early days are harder, but we actually get a lot of our business referrals from our customers, refer us to their people they work with. So in some instances, we're working with a shipper and they see how we're helping them. So they refer us to their supplier who's shipping into there. So like if they have a manufacturing center where they're going to ship from that manufacturing center to a distribution center, the person who's supplying their manufacturing center is also shipping. They have inbound shipping. So they just connect us and they can put one driver from
That's cool.
origin to second point to third point. So, you just start, you got to chip away at the first, but once things start moving.
Do you do anything to foster referral relationships? Do you do anything to encourage that?
I mean, we really haven't yet. I think we'll probably start thinking about that. It's hard though, I think, in a B2B environment, how do you incentivize that? The big incentive for them, honestly, is we work better when we're working with their inbound provider or that kind of thing, like the raw materials that come into their facility that they're going to now make something out of and ship that out. It's a more seamless process if they connect us. So there's already kind of a business incentive there for them. But besides that, we haven't done anything. We probably should.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, it's something that we've tried and failed at, to be totally frank. It's hard a hard nut to crack, it's without being kind of slimy, hey, you got any people, you can send my way. It's like, how do you, it's a strange thing.
It's a different business model, but I remember Dropbox, I always thought that was a great, I think we studied that in business school, Josh, I'm not sure, but they're genius, okay, you have this much free storage. Oh, you want more? Just refer us to your friend. When they sign up, you both get a free space.
Huh.
Your experience of using the software is better the more people you recruit, because you get more space for free.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I mean, it's a different. I always think okay, how can you do that with this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
You guys do. So you did a lot of paid ads. I'm curious, and share what you feel comfortable, obviously. So I've been hearing LinkedIn ads. Have you had success with those? I'm always curious because we've never tried them, but
we've done some. They can be pretty expensive when you're working on a modest budget. So I mean, I've been running an ad campaign. I'll probably scale up at some point, but it's been kind of a modest budget. I have a really great agency I can always share with you guys. They're awesome. Who've helped us. But what we did is when I was running that account-based marketing thing where I was okay, I'm not going to pay for one of these big expensive softwares as a year and a half ago. I want to prove this even works out. So I built that lookalike pool with them on LinkedIn. And then when someone would click on it, those are expensive on LinkedIn. So we, would retarget them more cost effectively on Google Ad Network, So we had a good cookie pool going. So there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen there. They've already expressed an engaged interest in our brand. So if we want to retarget them, let's do it more cost effectively. So there's ways you can kind of do that. But LinkedIn, it also depends. Are you buying CPC, you're buying CPM? I mean, what's your goals? If you're going for awareness, then you buy CPM and you just kind of get the eyeballs. But if you want conversions, that can also get kind of expensive. So, but if it's the right customer who clicks through, who cares how much it is? If it's $10 for the click, if they convert, right? If it pays for it, that's the whole model for why you can throw a ton of money on Google SEM. If it's converting, sure, I'll pay $15.
Well, and that's something that I hadn't ever thought about, was using LinkedIn to just strictly from a retargeting perspective, because it does become super targeted at that point. It's they've got a ton of data, and you could hone in on your exact market down to the decision maker, and then if you could retarget them on other platforms, that makes a lot more sense. It's worth it.
what I do think, LinkedIn can be expensive, but what I do like about it is if you're in a B2B situation, like if I'm targeting someone who's a director of transportation for a large organization, they're on LinkedIn, they're in business mode probably. I mean, maybe they're like looking for the next job, but they're in business mode. I probably don't want to hit them up on Facebook or Instagram with my business model, like if they're not on Instagram thinking about, maybe they are, but like, okay, I want to cut costs on my shipping, or like, I really need to, drive a sustainability initiative for my trucking organization. Probably not on Instagram, maybe on LinkedIn. So I always think about like, what's the mindset of the person engaging with the content that I'm surrounding too. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we experience the same exact thing. Facebook and Instagram are deserts for us in terms of engaging with our target.
Yeah.
Target
They
market.
can be inexpensive. You'll get some.
Yeah,
clicks.
exactly. We definitely. Yeah, exactly. It's relatively easy to set up, and you get a lot of clicks for relatively cheap. But it's just garbage.
And I've worked in businesses where those were great channels for whatever we're trying to achieve. So it really does, depend on what you're selling. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. So it doesn't either at Leaf or at another company you've worked at. Maybe like what's one like marketing thing where you kind of learned a hard lesson? Maybe if you have like an example.
Oh gosh, how much time do you have? I don't know. Let's see. I think in that startup I co-founded, felt like documentation would be really important for some of the products we're putting together, because it was kind of complex, and like if you're a developer, you needed to know a lot of the documentation in there. So kind of started a lot with I spent a lot of my time early on in the documentation phase and creating all these assets and that kind of thing, and then went to focus on lead gen and converting. And it was like, yeah, you want a good experience for someone coming in so that they have everything you need. But I realized I burned a lot of time doing that, and probably should have flipped it to say, okay, go get the demand and then figure it out. And that's really the lesson I've learned in working with startups, is like at the early days, like seed stage, maybe Series A, whatever. But it's like, okay, what fire's burning the hottest? Let's go there. What's like the most important next step we have to take? Don't get too far ahead of, like, sure, you want a beautiful like onboarding experience and all these things, but
don't pre-optimize.
Yeah, so I burnt a lot of time focused on the wrong thing. Like ultimately it was needed, but just not in the order. It's like go prove there's demand, go get the customers, and like maybe you'll lose one of the two or something, but like you're gonna lose them both if you don't get up off your couch and go get them. So I think that's like just a big lesson I always think of, and I have to stop myself a lot, because a lot of us are perfectionists saying, hey, we want everything to be perfect. Well, what's good enough to ship? Well,
it's kind of like that lean startup.
Yeah, but it's hard though. It's like, and also, but as like a shepherd of the brand, being in marketing, it's like I want everything to look and feel perfect and beautiful, but it can't be at this stage. So what does good enough look like, and what's a good customer experience? And now we're starting to shift on like quickly growing and like that growth stage. So things are different now. I'm hiring for different disciplines and that kind of stuff. So now we have more capabilities, but for a while it was me spinning a lot of plates.
Yeah. Figure it out mode is less fun than growth mode.
Yeah.
What I've seen.
I think like it's also interesting too that, I've found it's hard to test and optimize quickly if you don't already have that demand. Right. Yeah. And you end up maybe changing things without enough data just because the demand's not there. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's like, I think that goes back to that account-based marketing. Like I thought that would work. I think that's a good idea. But before I invested heavily in it, I was like, let's just create a test and see if it works. And that's like, okay, I can cobble together some email sequences I'll do myself, and this LinkedIn kind of thing, and some direct mail pieces, et cetera, and phone calls that I force this executive to call people, that kind of thing, and then prove the need. And then it's like, okay, now we can go invest in it. But I don't want to go buy a fancy software first and then have to let it sit on the shelf.
Right.
So it obviously worked, and then you just grew it.
Well, I just hired someone now who's taking that on. So
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's off my desk. No.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
You can focus on other things. Cool. No, that's a good lesson. So yeah, I guess maybe shifting gears a little to just like more general stuff. What's some advice that you've kind of taken with you throughout your career that's been helpful to you that would help others?
I think, a couple things. It's more about, I don't know if it's any like one piece of advice versus things I just learned along the way. So I know I was only there for a couple months, but when I was at Apple for my internship during business school, one of the things I really noticed in just about every meeting I was in was someone was like, yeah, we got to focus. We got to focus. And like the word focus just kept coming up. And I was in one meeting and like, I don't know, I was lucky to be fly on the wall in a couple of interesting meetings with executives and that kind of stuff. And I remember we were proposing, we created a new solution, and I was working in the iBookstore and part of the App Store at the time. So, and we had this discussion, and he said, well, yeah, we could do that, and we could do a really good job at it, but we could also allow someone in our App Store to be an expert in that and do a great job, better than we could, and we could focus on something else. So that's something that I've kind of taken to heart, to say, okay, we really have to focus. Like, we could do 100 things, we could do 10 pretty well, we can do 2 really well, but what can we do and knock it out of the park? And what are items where we could have a partner do a better job than we could? And so I think that comes through, in many forms. It's in product decisions, it's in, even thinking through how I build my team. What are the roles I want to bring on full time versus where is it better to hire like a PR firm or some folks who just do that, and maybe they're not full time for me, but I get more people pitching a story or that kind of thing. So I think the idea of focus, like that, I always come back to that. And then I think, the other thing is my husband always, whenever I'm excited or upset about something, he'll always say, well, we'll see. And I think it's just like, don't get too far ahead of yourself. Like, things may seem bad today, but they may not actually be that way. And I think if you always look back, like, your problems are never as bad as they seem at the time. You also don't know where you're going in the future. Anyway, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War, but there's a great scene in that where they talk about that whole concept. And it's like the story of the Zen master. I don't know if you ever, anyway, it's a great clip. You should look it up, but it's like, there's this kid's born, and he receives a horse for his birthday or something, and they say, oh, isn't that wonderful? And Zen master says, well, we'll see. He falls off and breaks his leg, and they say, isn't that terrible? And they say, oh, well, we'll see. And a war breaks out, and he can't go to war because his leg doesn't work. And they say, isn't that great? He's like, well, we'll see. And it's just like, have a steady hand in life and in business. And I think, just take the changes as they come. So that's my little philosophy for the day, I guess. Yeah.
Great life advice.
Yeah.
Cool. And for one final question, and if you don't have an answer, that's cool too. But like, is there like one book that you'd recommend?
I mean,
for business or life.
I read a lot of fiction because I think that I need the escape. But I guess along those lines, I was talking before. I am reading what is it, like How to Think Like a Roman Emperor book. It's all about Stoicism.
Okay.
So
haven't heard of that.
Great. It's kind of that same philosophy, right? Like a Stoic philosophy. So maybe it's not really a business book, but I think it's a good way to run your life and just business in general. So
yeah,
I like that approach.
How to think like a Roman philosopher.
Yeah, a Roman emperor. Yeah.
A Roman emperor.
Yeah,
okay.
It's good. I'm not done with it yet, so we'll see. But just taking lessons from Marcus Aurelius. So
cool.
We'll see.
Yeah, I just read through Marcus Aurelius Meditations.
Yeah.
And
great book.
It's good. It's good stuff. Definitely.
Yeah. What are you all reading these days? You got the meditations.
What's that? Oh, right now. So I moved to Texas about 8 months ago.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I just like to learn about the history of where I'm living. So I'm reading a book called Texas. It's like a historical fiction book about the history of Texas. So
cool. That's great.
That's what I'm on right now.
Right. I'm a huge fiction fan as well. Josh is our resident business and life advice book. He recommends great books for that for me. But I agree with you. I love reading fiction, and probably the most recent, / favorite of mine is called Shantaram.
Okay.
It's an awesome book. It's about this Australian guy who breaks out of jail actually, and then goes to India and ends up setting up this clinic. It's crazy. This is a crazy story, but it's a true story. Well, I guess it's not fiction. It is, well, maybe it's like slightly fiction. I don't really know what it is, but it's a really great story. Super long, but really cool. And
awesome.
That's one of my faves. Well, cool. Well, we'll wrap here. Just for everyone that has been listening, we've been chatting with Greer Lynch, who's in charge of marketing and strategy at Leaf Logistics. Greer, where can people learn more about you and Leaf Logistics?
So we're just Leaf, Leaf, logistics.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn if you want.
Perfect. Awesome.
Easy.
Thank you so much, Greer. And
thank you both.
Chatting with you.
Yeah. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Greer.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast today. We're going to go grab some tacos and beer, and we hope to catch you on the next one.